so I'm not. We won't be able to see you, Tom or Bert today. But David will prompt me if you have a comment, or you can just start to speak over me. But with that, we will get going. Bear with me. All right, I would like to officially call to order the October 12th, 2023 Bureau of Household Goods and Services Advisory Council order. My name is Justin Paddock. I serve as Chief of the Bureau. Today is going to be a hybrid council meeting. I believe Tom Keepers and Bert Grimes are on the WebEx. David, could you confirm that for me?
Having just a little bit of trouble hearing you. Will you move closer to the mic, please?
Sure. Is this a little bit better?
No change.
Okay. I will do my best.
Please repeat what I'm confirming for you.
Oh, no problem. I was just confirming that Tom Keepers as well as Bert Grimes had joined us on WebEx.
We have an audio and visual check with Bert Grimes. We have not heard from Mr. Keepers.
I'm on. I'm here. Thanks.
Okay, got it.
Video works too.
All right.
Oh, I heard Tom's
Heard him and
voice.
see him.
There. All right. We're going to sort through our technical issues. I'm sorry, everyone. Today is actually going to be a hybrid council meeting. So again, we've got two of our members on WebEx. We may have members of the public who joined us on WebEx. We also have members of the public here in the room. Just for some housekeeping items, there's a couple of exits which are open for any sort of egress. If anyone needs to use the restroom, go back to the security counter and then just sort of go back and take a left. It's kind of a funny building, but the restrooms are right there. And with that, I will start with roll call. We'll start with Pascal. Good morning. Bert Grimes.
Good morning.
I think I heard good morning. Tom Keepers.
Sure.
Donald Lucas. Present. Sarah Oakley. Dan Rose.
Good morning.
And Toby Taylor.
Here.
All right, and then Mr. Steve Whitekamp has an excused absence today. But we do have a quorum. I'd also like to welcome Bureau staff here today, as well as Judy Bucciarelli from the DCA Board and Bureau of Relations, as well as Michael Canuck, our legal counsel at DCA's Office of Legal Affairs. And also I'd like to thank Bryce for helping us with the webcast today, as well as David, who's going to be serving as our WebEx moderator. David, would you like to briefly describe how public comment will work through the WebEx?
Absolutely. When public comment is called for, you'll see a visual on the screen, which I have up now. You'll be prompted to raise your hand. You can do this by tapping the hand button at the bottom of your screen. I see that we have people on mobile devices. You may need to switch back to the main screen. You'll probably have 3 different screens to choose from, but the main one will have your hand icon. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. We also have a Q&A box open where you can type the word comment if you're having trouble with the hand button, and we will recognize comments in the order they are received. People will be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning before their time expires. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, David. With that, that's essentially our welcome and introduction. I'm going to move on to agenda item number 2, which is public comment on any items not on the agenda. Essentially, if you have an application or a complaint or disciplinary charges pending before the Bureau, I ask that you not discuss the specifics of that case with us today. And also, if your comments are related to a specific agenda item, you can speak now or you can actually wait until that agenda item. It's entirely up to you. And last, I would like to know that we're going to keep public comment to 3 minutes apiece. But if there are any issues, I'll be happy to take anyone. With that, I'm going to open up to members of the public in the room if they have any public comment they'd like to make at this time. Actually, you can come up to the desk or you can come to the podium. There's a little button you can push. Make sure there's a green light that comes on. So
morning, Bureau staff. My name is Troy Willis. I'm a licensed public adjuster and also a resident of California, state of California. I'm here today to discuss an issue that we have that's a major issue in the insurance industry that now I'm aware that you're more aware of than I thought. And that's with these movers that's actually violating the Assembly Bill 224 that was created by Todd Bailey, the Movers Act. So many of these movers that's involved with these restoration and insurance where people have floods, fires, have to move and pack out their stuff. The charging fees is just so ridiculous, and they're just totally unrelated to industry costs. For example, I have a client who they packed, I won't speak of the company, but this company packed out 12 medium boxes and a living room set and charged them $22,000. And they were holding their furniture hostage until they were paid for these particular items. So this is an ongoing problem with this particular company and many more. The problem we have in most of the insurance companies industry is actually supporting these people and hiring them on as vendors. And so when the customer actually signs a contract with them, the insurance company in return tells them that you signed a contract with them, we did not. So now they're leaving them on the hook for not getting their personal property back, which is a major issue itself. Under the Movers Act, my understanding is that each person who moves property as a moving company or restoration company must have a permit number if they're moving in those state or federal highways, as well as they need a permit number if they're moving appliances. There's thousands of companies in the state of California that's avoiding that permit number, which is also stealing from the state of California by not getting these permits as well. As a licensed public adjuster, I have a responsibility to pay fees myself to the state. So to me, I bring today to you, what will we do about preventing these companies from continuing to, one, hold people their property hostage, two, avoid these fees that they're owed to the state, and three, sanctions that need to be put upon these companies that's acting on illegal purposes towards these policyholders. This is a major issue throughout the state. It's not just one time it comes to me. I get many calls to people that we don't even take claims from because they're so far in the pocket of these people for thousands of dollars, which is totally unnecessary. These people charge for boxes that we have to inspect. We're going to charge you to inspect all boxes, things of that nature. We're going to bring out material, but we're going to charge you astronomical prices to bring it out in trucks and so forth. So if anyone here today can help me understand how, in a real world we live in, how 12 boxes and a few pieces of furniture could be $22,000, I think we all know that's a problem. Thank you.
Mr. Willis, I appreciate your comments. Again, this item isn't on the agenda, so I won't go into any detail here, but I appreciate your comments, and the enforcement chief, Ms. Alda Curie, and myself will be reaching out to you shortly to set up a meeting and discuss more.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. With that, is there anyone else in the room who'd like to make public comment? Are there any council members who wish to make any public comment on an item not on the agenda? All right. Any council members on the line that would like to make any public comment on the agenda? David, would you mind opening it up to the public who are joining via WebEx for me?
We are now accepting public comment via WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. Anyone may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Looking around, I see no requests. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you so much. So with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 3. She, with the manager in PCA's executive office with board and bureau relations, will be providing our update.
Good morning. Not on. There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think you have to almost.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah.
I think the fan.
Yeah, no problem. Second, G. Frank, would you mind just upping the volume a little bit more?
Better?
Yes.
Better. Much better. Okay, well, good morning. My name is Judy Bucciarelli from the Department of Consumer Affairs, and I thank you for the opportunity to join me today. On behalf of the department, I'd like to thank all council members for their dedication and service to the Californians we serve. To begin, I'll start with the diversity, equity, and inclusion update. On September 29, 2023, the DEI Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting. The committee discussed employee engagement, cultural events and observances, membership composition, DEI training, hiring principles, and the development of a DEI webpage for employees. The committee plans to roll out DEI hiring principles and launch the internal DEI webpage by the end of the year. The DEI Steering Committee is pleased to announce that outside consultant, Dr. Bernard Gibson, provided in-person DEI training to over 150 DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders on October 4th. In addition, Dr. Gibson provided virtual training to board members on October 9th. For those that attended, we encourage you to take the survey that was emailed after the training. Your opinions are vital in determining future training needs and opportunities. Dr. Gibson has 20 years corporate experience managing teams and training employees in business effectiveness. He also has extensive teaching experience at various colleges, including serving as adjunct faculty since 2006 at University of Massachusetts for the School of Business and Professional Studies. On November 7th, UMass consultant Christopher Veal will provide training entitled DEI Dialogue for Leaders to DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders. Veal's training will include example language and tools, discuss psychological safety and how it impacts these conversations, and include interactive discussion around challenges leaders are facing. DCA encourages all executive officers, bureau chiefs, and their management teams to attend. Finally, the DEI Steering Committee is pleased to highlight the work of the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, which is collaborating with the Los Angeles County Probation Department to launch the first youth and county-level barbering program. The board hopes to have it operational by late winter. Furthermore, the board has been collaborating with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to relaunch its testing program within the state's correctional facilities, expanding to include barbering, and it is anticipated that this will be a large program with 4 facilities committing to include barbering schools. If your bureau has DEI activities you would like to share with other boards and bureaus, please share them with DCA Board and Bureau Relations. Next, I'd like to share some information related to press release translation. To further the department's efforts to reach the Californians we serve, DCA will request boards and bureaus to translate press releases into Spanish, California's top non-English language spoken. By establishing a standard for translating releases into both English and Spanish, it will enhance the reach of information released. Boards and bureaus are also encouraged to evaluate any additional languages outside of Spanish that may serve their audiences. If you have questions or need more information, please contact DCA's Office of Public Affairs. Moving on to in-person meetings and the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. On September 13th, Senate Bill 143 was signed by Governor Newsom and became effective immediately. Included in this bill was language related to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, which allows for remote public meetings without notice locations accessible to the public until December 31st, 2023. Senate Bill 544, a bill also pertaining to the Open Meeting Act, was signed by the governor. Commencing on January 1, 2024, 4 meeting options will be available under Bagley-Keene, and I'll run through those options. Option number 1 is a traditional single location option as follows. A majority of members are gathered at one publicly noticed and accessible location. No members participating remotely, and there is no requirement to allow remote public participation. Option number 2 is a traditional teleconference option as follows. Members are present at different publicly noticed and accessible locations connected via phone or WebEx, and there is no requirement to allow remote public participation. Option 3 is a new teleconference option as follows. A majority of members gathered at one publicly noticed and accessible location. Extra members above a majority can participate remotely from private, non-public sites, and this option must allow remote public participation. Option number 4 is a new advisory body teleconference option as follows. All members can participate remotely from private, non-public sites. This option must have at least one publicly noticed and accessible location where at least one staff member is present and where the public can participate in the meeting, and also must allow for remote public access. We encourage all DCA boards and bureaus to work closely with their legal counsel to ensure compliance with the Open Meeting Act. Next, I have 2 required member training reminders. As we approach the final months of the year, there's a DCA-wide mandatory training that if you already haven't completed, we ask that you do so immediately. All DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory council members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training. Advisory council members must take the 1-hour non-supervisory training. The training is required every odd number year and is online, self-paced, and approximately 2 hours. Sexual harassment prevention training is available in the department's learning management system. If assistance is needed in accessing LMS, please reach out to your bureau liaison if available or to board and bureau relations. Equally important is board member orientation training. Board and advisory council members must complete board member orientation training, also known as BMOD, within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. The final board member orientation this year was conducted on October 10th. Once the 2024 dates have been finalized, Board and Bureau Relations will notify your bureau chief and those members who need to take the training but weren't able to do so this year. Members can register for this training via the learning management system. Moving on, I'd like to share information related to the Our Promise campaign launch, State Employees Giving at Work campaign. This year's DCA Our Promise State Employees Giving at Work campaign co-chairs are Monica Vargas, Deputy Director of Communications, and Yvonne Durantes, Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. This annual campaign gives state employees, including board and advisory council members, an opportunity to support nonprofits through a one-time donation through payroll deduction. These contributions make a positive impact by providing vital resources to those experiencing poverty, homelessness, food insecurity, and also offer support to many causes such as veterans, animals, the environment, and more. We hope you will join the state's campaign and contribute to one or more nonprofit of your choice. With your assistance, DCA will continue its tradition of generosity and caring for our communities. This year's campaign officially kicked off on October 5th and runs through December 31st, 2023. For additional information, please contact Assistant Deputy Director Yvonne Durantes, Board and Bureau Relations. And finally, Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency Secretary Lourdes Castro Ramirez recently announced she has been appointed to serve as the Chief of Housing and Homelessness in the office of Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, effective November 2nd. Secretary Castro Ramirez has been an extraordinary partner to DCA and the boards and bureaus. She has also been a consumer protection champion. We are grateful for her leadership, and she will be missed. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the DCA update today. And at this time, I'll hand it back to Justin, and I welcome any questions from the council members.
Thank you so much, Judy. Any questions from council members in the room? I think the one comment I'll make is as far as the options for how we'll sort of WebEx and teleconferencing, we'll do that in close coordination with Michael for 2024. Any questions in the room? Any questions from council members joining us on WebEx? Seeing no members of the public in the room, David, would you mind opening the public comment online?
We are once again accepting public comment online, this time for the DCA update. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand. Anyone may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Looking around, I see no requests for comment. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. All right, with that, thank you so much, Judy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're going to turn to agenda item number 4, which is going to be our fiscal update, and I believe Suzanne Balkus is joining us online. So, Suzanne, I'll hand it off to you. David, do you see Suzanne, maybe as a member of the public? Can you elevate her?
Tell me that name again, please.
Suzanne Balkus, B-A-L-K-I-S.
Founder. Suzanne, you should be able to unmute your microphone at will.
Everybody, can you hear me good?
Yes, thanks, Suzanne. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everybody. My name is Suzanne Balkus, and I am currently the acting budget manager with DCA. I want to thank the Bureau and the advisory council members for allowing me time to present today. I'm here to present the 22-23 FM13 fund condition. Please refer to agenda item 4, pages 2 to 4 of your meeting materials. The attached fund condition statements is based on 2023 Budget Act and include 2022-23 prior year FM13 revenue and expenditure. First, we have the fund condition for electronic appliance repair, or EAR. EAR have a 22-23 beginning balance of about 3.7 million, overall revenue of 2.5 million, and a total expenditure of about 2.9 million. That give you a fund balance of about 3.2 million, which is about 9.1 months in reserve. Next, we have current year 23-24 with 2023 Budget Act and full appropriation. We have 23-24 beginning balance of about 3.2 million, estimated revenue of about 2.6 million, and an estimated total expenditure of about 4.2 million. That gives us a fund balance of about 1.6 million, which is about 4.5 months in reserve. Budget year is based on governor's budget, and budget year +1 is based on realize. The next document we have is for the fund condition for home furnishing and thermal installation, or HEFTI. We have a 22-23 beginning balance of about 6.8 million, overall revenue of 5 million, and a total expenditure of about 5.3 million. That give you a fund balance of 6.6 million, which is about 11.9 months in reserve. Next is the current year 23-24 with 2023 Budget Act and full appropriation. We have 23-24 beginning balance of about 6.6 million, estimated revenue of about 5.4 million, and an estimated total expenditure of about 6.6 million. That gives you a fund balance of about 5.3 million, which is about 9.3 months in reserve. And same thing, budget year is based on governor's budget, and budget year +1 is based on realized. And lastly, we have the fund condition for household movers, which is HHM. We have a 22-23 beginning balance of about $8 million, overall revenue of $4 million, and revenue transfer to Motor Carriers Safety Improvement Fund of $21,000. We have total expenditure of about $3.2 million. That gives you a fund balance of about $8.7 million, which is about 28.5 months in reserve. The next is we have the current year 23-24 with 2023 Budget Act and as well as full appropriation. We have 23-24 beginning balance of about $8.7 million, estimated revenue of about $4.5 million, and estimated revenue transfer to Motor Carrier Safety Improvement of $21,000. Estimated total expenditure of about $3.7 million, which gives you a fund balance of $9.5 million, which is about 30.2 months in reserve. And budget year is based on the governor's budget, and budget year +1 is based on realized. We do not have any immediate concern for any of these funds, so please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And before I sort of open it up to comment, I'd just like to direct the council's attention to pages 5 and 6. So this is something that came at the request of the council at our last meeting to sort of see how our projections change over time. So I tried to make this straightforward, but if visually it's a little confusing, just give me some suggestions on how to do it in the future. But the first number that you're going to see in each of those boxes, the red one, is essentially what was reported at the October 2022 meeting. Then the one below it is the blue one. That's the January of this year. Then green, June, and then what we're actually seeing today. Hopefully that's fairly straightforward. The number that I care the most about on a day-to-day basis is essentially the months in reserve. I very much care about the revenue and expenditure, but it's a quick glance that I can see. And I think this sort of just shares with the narrative that I've had on previous budget updates with the council that we sort of project pessimistically for a reason. If I'm going to be wrong, I'd rather be wrong on the rough side. So if you've seen over time, I think the electronic compliance repair one is probably the most telling. Early on in this process, we were at a half a year, and now we're at 3/4 of a year months in reserve. And that's through salary savings, just with vacancies, as well as just not making certain purchases, things of that nature. And that's that reversion that I always talk about. That's what you're seeing here. And then in the out years, you're seeing less of a dramatic increase, but as those numbers are actually realized, you'll again sort of see more of a dramatic change. The one other thing I'd like to highlight just before I open this up to comment is you're probably going to see something like this just one more time. Because July 1 of next year, all three of these funds merge. And just for members of the public who that may be news to them, right now the Bureau has 3 different funds, but we have employees, for the most part, I would say over 80% of our employees who are working on every single act every single day. So we have a special investigator working for Alda who in the morning could be starting an electronic compliance repair phase. They could be going to a public storage facility after that, and then they could be ending their day at a furniture retailer. It's really hard to break up how in the world to sort of bill that to all 3 funds. So the plan that we have, and I'm going to sound like a broken record when we get to the sunset bill and essentially say a lot of this again, is before each sunset, so and that the next one will be in 2027, we essentially need to conduct an audit. And we're going to see where we spend our time. As I said sort of earlier in the last previous meetings, we've essentially been spending a lot of time on household movers because we're still very much in the implementation phase of household movers. And that's sort of come at a detriment for the other 2 funds just because we're in the implementation phase. I really hope by the end of 2024, and you should hold me to it, that I'm not saying that anymore. At that point, we will essentially start the audit. And I think I still need to work with DCA Budget Office as well as DCA Internal Audits Office about what that will look like. But essentially an audit of how I spend my day, how all the staff spends their day. And then based on the results of that, that'll inform our sunset review report and whether or not fees need to be adjusted for the various professions. Hopefully Tom can hear me right now. I think Tom will be the one who's going to get the most fee increase because service contract administrators constitute a lot of our workload in the year space. So, Tom, you got a 4-year reprieve, but I'm expecting your fees to go up next time we do sunset review. But I think that's about the only one I'm fairly certain of at the moment. I'll be curious to see what the audit results when we're essentially doing base operations. So with that, I've spoken for a while. I apologize. I'm going to open it up to council member comment in the room. Again, let me know if this layout works or if you'd like to see something a little bit.
This is Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, Tom. All right, you're on.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate your comments. Looking around the corner, I could glibly say, well, maybe you should think about tempering the work itself, but I won't. I'm the one that asked for this statement of changes. And actually, you guys really have over delivered. I was thinking of something a little bit more simple, and we could talk about that for when we get to those consolidated reports. What I was really interested in is just tell me what's changed from like from meeting to meeting. So our last meeting was in June, and then we have this meeting. The page actually is exactly the same, but all it is a statement of changes. So puts and takes show up in the same cells, and that's all I was looking for, just so that it immediately points you on those pages then to what has changed, and then the individual Suzanne that's actually given the update, it's right there, so we can follow along. So that's what I was looking for. This is, like I said, over delivered. And so I'd still be interested in a go forward basis, and I can wait until the consolidated view to talk about a page that just has a statement of changes for each of actually it'll be a consolidated view at that point. Thank you.
Got it. I think I follow Tom, but I think I'm a little slow too. So I may talk to you offline just to make sure I caught kind of what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
And then before I open it up to members of the public, Bert, did you have any comments? Again, we're on page 5 and 6. Or I'm not sure. Has Bert joined?
Yes, my only comments, Bert Grimes, is on page 3 and page 4. I don't think this will make that much difference because we're making a change. But could we get the columns to be equal? The first column on the home furnishing starts out with current year. First column on the household movers starts out with, I lost my mind here.
I see. It's prior year. I understand. I'm sorry about that, Bert. Absolutely.
Yeah, if we just get those for a little bit easier, but I don't think it's that big of a deal since we're going to be consolidating anyway.
Got it. How did you do that? Sorry about that, Bert. Any other comments from the council? All right. With that, David, would you mind opening it up to the public?
We are accepting public comment on agenda item 4. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a couple of seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing none, would you like to continue with the agenda?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you,
All right,
everybody.
with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is a discussion of citation fines collected. Just as a reminder to the council, we reported in June, essentially that we saw numbers that we actually just knew for a fact weren't the case. What we've done is, in what's before you on page 8 of your packet, our numbers we're actually very confident in, and we actually audited. These are internal reports as opposed to the budget report that we have. And we're fairly confident in these numbers. What we're going to be doing moving forward is what we think is happening is when the budget reporting system moved on to a new IT system called FISCAL, we think basically, when someone paid a citation, it was probably being attributed to the wrong pot of revenue. And so we're essentially looking to get that fixed, and we're actually trying to do it as part of our fund consolidation because there's going to be a lot of work to essentially consolidating the three funds. So we're essentially just trying to make sure that by July 1, everything is tracking correctly. And so that's essentially where we are with essentially updating the report. But with that, what I will say is I'm confident in these numbers, but I don't like the amount that we're collecting. So, and I think you can see that here. And we've actually done a couple things with that. The Bureau in early 2023, I think we got the approval for reorganization. And part of the reorganization was creating a high-level analyst and an entry-level analyst into a small unit in enforcement called case management. Case management is going to be doing quite a few things for Alda, who's our new enforcement chief. It's going to be auditing. It's going to be ensuring that data entry is done correctly, especially by new employees. But one of the other things it's going to be doing is essentially making sure that the collections process that we've established with the Franchise State Tax Board is adhered to. And we're hoping by essentially doing that, there's a series of letters you have to get out, and if you follow that step-by-step procedure, then you can actually refer these individual businesses to the Franchise Tax Board, and then they're essentially on the hook until it's actually done. We're going to continue to watch the collection rate. This will be the last time you see it in the fiscal section. What's going to happen for future meetings is it's just going to be an item that you see in the enforcement section along with the other enforcement statistics. But we're going to keep tracking it, and hopefully we'll see an improvement in fines collected. The case management analyst positions actually posted this week, and I think that they're open for 2 weeks into recruitment. And that's they're actually available for applications right now, so we hope to have that filled before we're in 2024. With that, I'll open it up to questions to council members in the room first.
And just one question. What would you say is the timing to the franchise? How long would you say that these two letters?
So it's 2 letters, and I want 3 letters. Pascal, I'm going to make a guess, but what I think I need to do is I'll follow up with you because I can't do it from memory. I'm going to say about 120 days, but I'll follow up.
No, that's I just wanted to get a general.
Yeah, it's a series of 3 letters, and I just forget what they're. I think they're 30 days spaced apart. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Any other questions from council members in the room? How about council members online?
Once again, just a question on this. I'm having a hard time hearing you, Justin, so maybe you said it and I didn't understand it. But if, say, for example, the first one on the air, we issued $33,000 in citations. We only collected $9,500. What happened to the rest of the money? Was some of it not paid? Was some of it obviously not paid, or was some of it excused, like you dropped some of the citation amounts?
Actually, so thanks for that question, Bert. Is this better? I'm basically using the mic now.
A little bit better.
Can you hear me a little bit better, Bert?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what you're seeing in those 2 numbers, the 33,000 and the 9,500, that is strictly individuals or businesses who have not paid what they owe. There's a little asterisk next to the box that says citation amount assessed. And the reason for that is there are several instances where the Bureau assessed a certain citation amount, and then through something called the Citation Review Conference, it was decided that that amount should be reduced or withdrawn. And we're including what's currently assessed. So I didn't report the larger number before those hearings. I can, it's relatively easy, but I figured it's more informative to you to essentially know what the Bureau feels is outstanding and what it's actually collected. So any sort of modification that's done through the enforcement process is incorporated into 33,000.
What's the chances of collecting the difference, the 23,000 roughly?
So my hope is through hiring that senior level analyst and that entry level analyst, they're going to go through essentially a collections process that's formalized with the state. And when you actually meet, when you meet all the steps of that collections process, you can actually refer that entity to the Franchise Tax Board. And we hope through that, that we're going to get better compliance.
Thank you.
And we're currently recruiting those 2 positions. Any other questions from council members online? All right, with that, David, would you mind opening to the public?
We are once again accepting public comment, again on item 4. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise their hand. Anyone may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Looking around, I see no requests for public comment. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you so much, David. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 5. That's just review of our June 14th Advisory Council meeting minutes on page 10. At this time, I'll just open it up to the council, our standard meeting minutes. Any questions, any concerns, any errors that you saw? And I'll also open it up to council joining us via WebEx. Anything you saw in the minutes to make corrections? All right, hearing nothing. David, would you mind opening this public comment for me, please?
We are accepting public comment on the meeting minutes. If you would like to make a comment on the minutes, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And anyone may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Looking around, we have no requests for public comment. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Thank you so much, David. Yes. So just a note for those, when there are no corrections to the minutes, we just sort of let the meeting minutes in the material packet stand. If we ever do make a correction, then we just make a new link on our website with the updated minutes. So in this case, it'll just be the item, the meeting minutes that is in the material packet. And with that, we will turn on to agenda item number 6. Deanne Rhodes and Toby Taylor are going to give us a presentation on the Ignition Interlock device. Essentially the program here in California, as well as some comments about the rest of the nation. As they're gearing up, I'm just going to give them a second. I'm happy to report that Dan, Toby, myself, and Alda attended a meeting with the Bureau of Automotive Repair as well as Department of Motor Vehicles yesterday. It was a very productive meeting. We were able to talk about, I think, a lot of program issues. And we're going to establish probably in every other month, just teleconference among the entities that deal with Ignition Interlock device to discuss complaints, any sort of regulatory issues that are coming up, things of that nature. But it was a great meeting, and I really appreciate you both coming up early to do that. And with that, I will turn it over to Toby and Dan for their presentation.
Morning. Dan Rhodes with Clear to Drive. Been in the interlock industry for going on 25 years. Glad to be here to be a part of all this and spread some knowledge with you guys today. I don't know how interesting it'll be, but it is to me.
Good morning. My name is Toby Taylor. I'm Chief Compliance Officer for Smart Start Ignition Interlock. We're a vendor in California the same way Clear to Drive is. I've been in this industry for 30 years now, and we just wanted to bring to you guys, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that y'all have never had an Ignition Interlock device installed in your vehicle. This advisory council does play a role in the Ignition Interlock program, and so we thought it would be beneficial to introduce you guys to what the Ignition Interlock device actually is. So this is intended to be a very high level, just review of what the device is, how it's used in California, and what it does. And are you going to talk about page 22, Justin, or do you want us to?
You can, or I'm happy to.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. Just very quickly, there's really 3 entities involved in California's Ignition Interlock program. In order to be a technician, which are the people that install the devices, you must possess a BHGS license or a BAR license. So this BHGS has some 2 pages of rules that you'll find on page 22 and page 23 of the book. BAR also has roughly the equivalent rules the primary program administrator in California is the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they have pages of rules. And so including certifying the devices, inspecting service centers, that kind of stuff. So our challenge is always to make sure that VHDS rules and BAR rules are in alignment with DMV rules. And so we learned yesterday DMV may be going into rulemaking, so we'll keep our ear to the ground on that because that may impact VHDS rules or BAR rules going forward. So go ahead and start the presentation on page 24. The slides are not working apparently for you guys to see, so thankfully Justin put it in the book. So starting on page 24, slide 2, ignition lock devices are an adaptation of screening device technology. You're familiar with PBTs or portable breath testers that law enforcement uses at roadside. Same technology in these devices that are incorporated in those devices. They're intended to provide a rapid approximation of breath alcohol concentration, and they do that. You can blow a sample and we can render a result within seconds. So it doesn't take very long. They're used extensively as a condition for driver's license actions and or court requirements in California. It's required by a court as a condition of a restricted driver license for certain individuals who have been arrested for a DUI and impaired driving alcohol-related offense. Okay. And they're capable of producing accurate and reliable results when proper scientific safeguards are applied. We are required in California to calibrate or verify the calibration of the device at least once every 60 days. And that is done at a service center, again, by a technician licensed by either VHDS or BAR. And so the calibration process is something that DMV inspects when they go out and do inspections at the service center when they do them. So,
Dan? Yeah, we can go on to slide 3. So, actually, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about right here. So, that's what we're passing around. That would be considered a handset device. The device is comprised of generally 3 categories that they talk about. One's going to be the handset that you blow into. One will be a relay box or something that's wired underneath the dash, and then a way to connect them between the two, a cord between the two. It's almost how every rule breaks it out with. But to give you an understanding of it, the part that goes up underneath the dash acts like an automotive alarm. It prevents the car from starting until the handset says, "Hey, I'm good." That handset itself, that Toby's holding in his hand, will require you to blow your sample into it, and once you pass that sample, then it'll open up and say, okay, now the car can send through a signal and start it. One of the common myths in the industry is that it'll shut off your car. And that's something that an interlock won't do. It's to prevent the car from starting. Once the car is operational, we can't stop the car from starting. In fact, all machines are programmed to allow a car to restart rapidly if it does shut off. For instance, if you're driving a stick shift and you stall out at a light, you don't want to have to go through and try to re-split in the middle of the left-hand turn. You need to be able to restart your car. So there's usually a 2-minute restart time. So you restart it and go. And then most units that are on the market today, all the data that's brought in, most of like Toby's unit and my unit does it remotely, does it through cellular communication. So we get that real-time report, but they're also stored both in the handset and in the logger underneath the dashboard. So as long as we can get a hold of either side of those units, we can also see all the data in it if there was, for some reason, didn't get it. And that's basically what comprises the device.
So we're going to pass these down, but Dan mentioned the handset. This is the part that client actually blows into. This mouthpiece is clean, by the way. It's a brain-bound package, so don't worry about that. Every device has a Corley cord similar to, for those of us that remember, the cord that used to attach a handset to a phone. Right? And that connects to the relay that Dan just spoke about, and I'll connect this. And so what you typically see, this is all installed out under the dash out of sight. All that the participant sees is this. And as Dan mentioned, they'll turn the device on. It's got a display that informs them and instructs them what to do. They blow a breath sample. If they pass, they have 2 minutes to start the car, depending on the free restart timer. And then off they go. And we'll talk about some specifications here in a minute. Here's the actual wiring harness that I'm going to pass down. This actually gets installed into the wiring of the vehicle. This connects to the relay, and that becomes the ignition lock system. So I'll pass this down to you guys. I just wanted you guys to be able to visualize it and take a look at it if you're curious. So as Dan mentioned, went through the components. With respect to installation, slide 4 on page 25, average takes anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours. A good rule of thumb is an hour, hour and a half. Obviously, installations for us are becoming more challenging every day because of electric vehicles. They don't have traditional copper wiring. They have CAN bus. And so it's a whole different technology for us. But the installation does include participant training on the device. Typically, all the manufacturers have a video that they watch. The technician will walk them through blowing a sample on the device because the devices do have different forms of anti-circumvention to ensure that the breath sample we're receiving is essentially human alveolar air, right, versus an air compressor versus that kind of stuff. But we wanted the lung sample typically requires 1.2 to 1.5 liters of air to get a sample. And if they don't satisfy the anti-circumventions and the volume requirements, the unit will abort the sample, which to Dan's point, there's a log on the device. That's a recorded event, and they can try again almost immediately.
And all of the logs play a large part in evidentiary behind a lot of these things, because you tell the story that it's told. Somebody's going through something, or somebody. You can also see it truly preventing drinking and driving when you're watching somebody attempt to start it, and it says no, you're too high, and then you watch it, see it 30 minutes later, an hour later, 2 hours later, and all of a sudden they're good to go. You see that that's not only a lesson being learned in them, but it's truly is flowing through. One of the things that's still being added with the installation is that as these things go on, he mentioned that that there's an anti-circumvention. And to just elaborate on that, as slide that each device, depending on the manufacturer, it has a way, a methodology or a style that you blow into it that you have to learn. And this avoids a balloon or an air compressor or something to give an air, because an air compressor can't pull air back or give air in a pattern. And each device has a slightly variation to it, but then they go through testing and it has to be approved before it goes into the state. And the whole purpose of it is, again, so we can stick it out the window while they're driving it, or put it. I mean, you where there's a will, there's a way. We've seen it all in the decades of the dealer.
But an important point to Dan's note, there are model specifications that are performance standards for ignition lock devices issued by National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. California, like most states, requires the manufacturer to submit their device to an ISO 17025 independent lab to test the device against the model specifications to ensure those performance standards are met. And then many states have additional performance requires that they require on the device, and I don't think that was anywhere in the presentation, so while you're talking about it, yeah, they will test devices at the state level to ensure the devices perform in accordance with the rules and requirements of states.
Okay, so states want to put it in the car and take it on the road. Some states want it to go to their lab. Some states just abide by NHTSA certified it. It's certified to that standard, so we're okay with it. Every state requires you to have that NHTSA certification, though, in order to even set foot in there and try testing. Oh, so we're going to go down to the interlock operation. Go to the next slide here, slide 5. So there's a couple of acronyms in here that we didn't, that are on other slides that we have that we didn't want to put in and bore you guys with. But one of them that you'll commonly hear in this industry is AID, EAIID. IID stands for Ignition Interlock Device, which, like I said earlier, is much like a car alarm. That is an ignition interlock. Anything that prevents the ignition from starting is an ignition interlock. BAID is just breath alcohol. So BAID. So BAID stands for breath alcohol ignition interlock device. When you blow into a machine, this is what we're going through, is how it operates. Yeah, so like I said earlier, you blow into a device, it's going to require a certain liter of air, depending on the person. But okay, you said usually 1.2 liters of air. Each state has a required set point. So if somebody blows into it, the device takes a sample. For instance, in California, it's 0.03. So anything above a 0.03 is going to fail and not allow that person to start. Anything close, like on our device, for instance, if it's getting close to that phase, it'll give them a warning to let them know that it's going to pass them, but you're there. And once you start a car, every state requires you to take a random read test. The theory is that you can't have somebody else start the car, drive in, or pull to a bar and just leave it running, those types of things. So they go off for random retest. And if you miss those, it's considered the same as failing. And generally, it'll put that device into an early recall, requiring you to come back in. It'll start counting down its days. Each time you come in for a service, you have a certain next time you're going to come back. If you mess up in between that, the device brings you back for an early recall and starts counting down your days. We got to put eyes on it, make sure it's not being tampered with. We got to calibrate the device, make sure it's working properly, and then download any data. Record your around that, and then whatever state you're in, generally there's a penalty for a violation of some sort. Some states disregard it, and some states extend programs. Some states make the removal based on if there's any violations on the record. So not necessarily they're going to extend the program, but you got to have 90 days clean before you can, but no violations or any type of issue before like that. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say on that, but.
One thing I'd point out that Dan mentioned, you may have noticed the set point for purposes of passing a sample and being able to start your vehicle is 0.03, significantly below 0.08, which is the legal limit for impaired driving. And part of the reason for that is to simply separate drinking from driving, because most people are not aware of their breath alcohol concentration while they're drinking. And I don't know when I've had 3 glasses of wine if I'm a 0.05 or a 0.07. And the message that I think states are trying to send is, if you've been drinking, don't try to drive or stop, right? And so that's why I think the set points are set as low as
0.03 would be considered a zero tolerance.
Yeah.
That would be any alcohol, any form of alcohol in your body. Sure of that.
So slide 26, slide 6 on page 26, the analytical properties of the device are incorporated fuel cell. Fuel cells have been around for decades in evidential devices. They've been tested ad nauseum. But basically what a fuel cell does is they are ethanol specific. So they do detect ethanol, which is what people consume as the impairing substance. And basically what it does, there's a lot of technical jargon in here, electrochemical device that absorbs it. It basically takes the alcohol, converts it to an electrical signal, and the electrical signal is measured. So the frequency of the electrical signal, if you will, the higher it is a higher breath alcohol concentration. So the most disposable part of the device, if you will, is the fuel cell. It's the most sensitive. The fuel cell is a perishable piece of the device, and that's why we verify the accuracy of the device via a calibration process once every 60 days. That device, when it starts to drip, will be picked up at calibration, and that device is pulled out of service and replaced with another.
Toby, where is that fuel cell in the mixture?
In the handset. Okay. Yeah.
So you just swap out the handset?
Yeah, that's why this is detachable, and the handset can just be swapped out, replaced. Another one can be put in. The breath pad, if you will, involves the anti-circumvention features that Dan talked about. Beyond hum or inhale, there are breath temperature sensors in here. There's humidity sensors. There's pressure sensors for volume and flow, because we have to ensure a certain volume of air. So there are several sensors in the handset, but the fuel cell is the one that is the most important, because it actually measures or measures the alcohol that's in the breath.
It's something that we didn't add to Toby's point with the anti-circumvention. Not every machine, but both of our machines have facial recognition and positive ID testing, where and not come through every test you could possibly think of to try to circumvent these things. You got to put your face there and put another thing underneath it. I mean, anything you can to try to figure out a way to make it that it can't be. But yeah, most devices now on the market have a camera installed both on the device and often.
The peripheral devices, states utilize the Dan's Point cameras to confirm we took the test. Modem for real-time data transmission, and GPS. Some jurisdictions require GPS because if there's a violation in certain jurisdictions, that rises to the level of a criminal offense, and they have to establish the jurisdiction where the violation occurred for purposes of filing charges. California currently doesn't use any of the peripheral devices.
Some states like New York want to get notice of where that data lives so they can put a trooper on.
Yeah.
It just depends. So it's ever evolving. Every state, every year, comes up with a new challenge for us to try to meet. We can go to the next slide. That brings us to the California program. So California officially became a program in 2010, in a pilot program in judicial courts in a series of counties. It had been being pushed in California. First interlocks installed in the early 90s in California, but only by judges' request, not at environment. And so the judge could do it if they wanted to. That a deal. Now the judge has to at certain points and can at others if desire to. It's currently still in a pilot program. The pilot program was renewed but went statewide in 2019 and comes to an end in 2025. Which is where I hope that California goes to a mandatory all-event program. currently in California, there's 14 manufacturers approved. There was like 26 a few years back, but there was some housekeeping that was done, and that's always needed in the state. And that's where regulatory bodies like ourselves play a big part. The most current numbers in the interlock industry, you always find numbers are lagging about 3 to 4 years. I think that accuracy. Last reported numbers that we were able to get a hold of in California was in 2019, about 32,000, just over 32,000 installed. Help me elaborate on this part here, though, where you're saying it's the highest installed out of the 23 states. Is that what we surveyed?
So, well, the Traffic Injury Research Foundation is a nonprofit research entity located in Ottawa, Canada, and they do a lot of research on ignition interlock, and they publish annually ignition interlock numbers, but the states can provide those numbers or they cannot provide those numbers. And so in 2019, there was 23 states that responded. For example, Texas was a state that did not respond, and they have far more devices installed than California does. So of the 23 states that responded to TIR's request for numbers, California had the most units installed.
Okay, correct. I didn't want to mess that up.
Yeah.
Because I know there's many states that have more than California.
Yeah, sure. So entities involved, slide 8, page 27, we talked about that briefly. If you will, I think the lead agency, if you would call it, is Department of Motor Vehicles. They have certified the devices, they require the device. We provide installation notice to DMV if they don't come in for service. Every 60 days, the device will actually lock out. So it will no longer accept a breath sample, therefore the vehicle can't be started. We have to notify them when that occurs. When the participant comes in subsequent to that lockout for service, we notify them again. We notify them of violations, removal. So they manage the program, if you will. But again, Office of Traffic Safety, Highway Safety does play a role. There is a strategic impaired driving plan that the Highway Safety Office will publish. Ignition interlocks are part of that strategic highway safety plan. There is also funding that the state of California can qualify for that goes to Highway Safety Office or Office of Traffic Safety here. If the law has certain requirements that meet its requirements, then that funding can go to Highway Safety. Highway Safety offices love that money because it's flexible money that they can spend in different programs. So, and then of course, as we mentioned, BAR and VHTS are involved in the program as well.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain exactly what the bureau, this bureau?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the next slide.
Yeah.
And we so graciously are going to let Justin go ahead and take the slide. Slide 9.
So this space is split up into essentially places where you're going to get your car repaired, get your oil changed. That's the Bureau of Automotive Repair. And then also it's split up to places where you can actually get like a car stereo installed. That's us. So essentially, if you're going to your mechanic, then BAR is going to regulate you. And the important thing is whether you're a stereo shop or an automotive repair dealer, we're treating you the same. And so that's why close coordination with BAR is important. It's why our regs read almost the same. But that's essentially our role. Our role is to make sure you as the consumer, when you walk into that stereo repair shop, a couple of things are happening. One, you're getting the appropriate invoice and estimates that you should expect from any electronic appliance repair dealer. In addition, there's certain equipment that you need to make sure that that's actually there so you can do a proper install. And you're not going to be damaging the vehicle in any way. And then we're making sure you're following all the guidelines of whichever companies that you've contracted with.
So I'm curious of the, let's say from 2019, 32,000, how many of the Bureau?
Total population count is hard to know because I don't necessarily know why you got your registration with here. I can say anecdotally, I think it's hard to know. It's hard to know because, and I, well,
it could be a variable too. And the reason I say it could be a variable.
Sometimes they come in and out.
We as an industry are going to regulate our own. We go in and train these service centers, so we're treating them all the same, whether they're VHTS or BAR. They're going to operate our standard, which is going to encompass both sets of regulations and try to marry them as best as we can. And for instance, my clients can go to any one of my locations if they would like to, with notice, so they may get installed at a bar certified location and being calibrated at a bear certified location. So it would be really hard to kind of put a tag on it, but I'm sure every shop knows. I know how many bar licenses I got and how many bear licenses I got when they're going to expire. That's one thing that we found is the shops don't like to on top of renewing it, so we give them that 60-day notice and 30-day notice that they need to get it.
They are contractor. We do contract with them, and they come and go.
Yeah.
Right? It's an add-on business for a lot of them, but Dan's clients can't come to one of our shops to get service. The service has to be done by the manufacturer who owns the device that's installed in it. There's unique service requirements for each device and more specifically unique software programs to interface with the device. So I'm not capable of getting into his device and he's not capable of getting into mine.
So I'm just curious, does the Bureau make money from this program or does it cost you? And the reason why is if you go, it seems like 32,000 isn't that many compared to the number of drunk driving convictions. And if they ramp it so that everybody had to put one in, would be a burden on the Bureau?
Not necessarily. I mean, so if they make a mandatory program, what would happen is there'd be a bill, I guess it would be in 2024, and I'd have to sort of scramble to see if I need more staff. I may want somebody in licensing because that means registrations are going to go up. We'll see if Jacqueline's nodding her head or not in the audience. I think Aldo would probably want someone in enforcement. I would attach a fiscal to it, but it's so hard to project those things because you never know if, it's essentially going to be a lot of the existing shops that are just going to have an increased business, or is there going to be a swoon? So I would seek, the way I would do it, just like any sort of budget conversation we have, I'd play it safe and ask for probably additional staff, but I'd still wait and see before I actually pull the trigger on actually hiring. That's typically what I do, yeah. But yes, I think, it's hard to project.
So we did have a couple of questions that were submitted. Any new technologies on the horizon? I assume, although I don't know, that we're talking about a podlyzer, the mythical, right, Sasquatch. Marijuana is very difficult to detect in a breath test. It's very difficult to measure, and more importantly, there's no agreed upon set point. Right? Today, in most jurisdictions, marijuana consumption is largely based on an officer's observations about their level of impairment, regardless of the actual nanograms that have been measured. And so there's a number of challenges around that, and I don't see anything that's portable. It's just a different technology. I will tell you the good news is, it's not good news, but of impaired driving arrests, roughly 40% are straight alcohol. The next largest category is alcohol and marijuana. The third largest category is alcohol and other drugs. And the smallest category is drugs alone. With a set point of 0.03, we're catching almost everybody that's using alcohol as a tracer to either swallow pills. Alcohol is involved in the vast majority of poly drug arrests. And so if there's any good news at all, is that the ignition interlock is still a very valuable tool, even in the instance of poly drug use. Because alcohol is one of the drugs of choice in the vast majority of those poly drug arrests. So I will say that. What issues do we repeatedly see on install, calibration, or removal of devices?
I talked about this earlier, and it's we're all human error. Nobody wants to have this in their car, so it's not like they're tracking the machine and using it very nicely and setting it down and taking very good care of it. My device kind of thing, they're tossing around. And then you got a shop that's maybe rushing through something, or it's a new technician. So there's always little things that you have to be aware of in this industry. And I would say human error is probably the largest thing. And that's why we all have so much emphasis around our training and standards and making sure that, we're using the right shops and doing the right things. But yeah, human error is probably the hardest part about all of this. And again, nobody's like, yeah, I get my interlock today, or I can't wait until I get to get my interlock. That's not the way, it's not a fun purchase for anyone. So human error is the largest.
Next was when it comes to repair, what are consistent issues that we see? The fuel cell, that's again, the analytical property of the device that actually measures the alcohol. It's the most sensitive part of the device. They can dry out due to long exposure with no humidity. But the challenge that we have with that is it tends to read erratically, and the clients will call us pretty quick when it's doing that. And we can't catch that. They also will fail to calibrate. And you'll see on the last slide a reference to quality assurance plans. California does require, as part of our certification process for each manufacturer, to submit a quality assurance plan. And that quality assurance plan is our devotion to the state around how we're going to manage calibration and at what point the device comes out of service if it fails to calibrate. So they do have some standards in place today to safeguard against that. But again, that's the most common repair item that we see outside of what Dan said. Somebody threw the device in the car and it broke a part of the device, which happens from time to time, typically when they fail.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So this is really out of curiosity. You said that there's facial recognition with the device. So if somebody has it on their car, a friend cannot drive the car, or if they give it to the valet.
Yeah, our recommendation on facial recognition is to be used on the back end to sort through the data for purposes of reporting violations. If I've got 1,000, if I've got 5 people driving a car, I need to be able to discern whether it's you or somebody else. If I've got a digital image, right? I don't know how you guys are using it.
Well, that's, like I was just in a conference in Kansas, and they said, clients could just figure out that facial recognition is for their benefit, not for this. And for instance, in Kansas, it's because they can't get it removed if there's a violation. So let's say you are sharing a car with your brother, your sister, whoever it may be, and they violate the machine. Now you have positive ID that it wasn't you that did it, and then Kansas will actually remove that and say, okay, well, it wasn't you. Yeah, here's clear to say it wasn't you. Is that answer?
Yeah. And are you seeing any employers around the country who are installing this on their fleet?
I wish you could see that more in the U.S. See in the U.K. though.
Yeah, in Europe it's used as a commercial application. You take a cab in a lot of European countries, you're going to see it with an interlock, but they don't have an offender-based program. It's the exact opposite here in the U.S. We do have voluntary clients. They tend to be people with professional licenses, lawyers, whatever, who have had a series of DUI arrests. And if they get another one, the felony conviction could jeopardize their professional license, so they'll keep it on as a way to prevent that. But we've had some commercial success, but not near like it is in Europe.
Yeah. Voluntary here is mainly, so we said professionals trying to make sure that they don't, they know they're still going to be going out, and they know they're still going to be doing those things, so they're trying to take that extra step, not that felony for that. Otherwise, you get parents that put on their kids' cars. Sometimes you get kids that put on their parents' cars.
And we do have civil cases where there's a divorce with an allegation of a parent who has parental rights who's drinking and they want to put a device on, and so there's some.
But that's you're talking you're talking a single-digit percentage of client base.
Any other interesting notes internationally? Just how others regulated?
It's very similar. There's 3 standards, really 4. There's NHTSA standard. Canadian has their own standard, CSA standard. CINELEC is the European standard, and then Australia has a standard. There's some subtle differences in the standards. CINELEC is really more design, where NHTSA is more performance. So perfect blending would be both of them, right? But there's not very many U.S. states that rely on anything other than NHTSA certification. In fairness, certification to the NHTSA standards. NHTSA doesn't certify the devices. We have them tested independently for that. So, yeah, good question. Yeah.
I had one question.
Yeah.
I know we have Lytx cameras in our commercial trucks, and we have monitors and there's dashboards. Where does all this data get pulled from?
Great question. The data is managed by the manufacturer. In most instances, there are some jurisdictions, and in fact, we had some discussion yesterday with California DMV about export, where our data would be exported straight into DMV systems so they could populate it into their system. But today in California, it's a paper-driven process. We analyze the data on the back end and report violations to the state.
For our states, like to add on to it, like for instance, in Arizona, we're required. We have a requirement to hold on and maintain those records for a period of 7 years after the client has been removed. But we also, on a daily basis, are sending all those reports and records through secure transfers to the state, and they're storing it. And so there's lots of states that store it, but every state requires us to have the record.
And tell me again, what are you hoping here long term as far as the document requirement?
Well, that's interesting. Yes, what changes would you like to see in how California regulates its industry was the last question. There is a record requirement here for a minimum of 5 years from removal of the device. which we're okay with. It's the records we're required to retain for that time period at the shop that's problematic. And so we were fortunate to have a discussion with DMV yesterday about that, to acknowledge that they're going into rulemaking, and it may be something that we could address with them. But these requirements have an impact on shops' willingness to participate in the program and install it, because they just don't have the storage space that requires to store documents. And so we're hopefully get some relief from that in the near future.
There's also one other question we didn't hear. It says, what equipment out there would you like to see technicians using? I don't know who asked it, and I don't know really how to answer it, but I would say no. I mean, everything that we have is
You just make it a requirement of either being a member or not, right? Like you gotta have X, Y, and Z.
Well, they're doing Carstero installs. They have the tools necessary to install this. It's a very similar installation. Yeah.
and basically it's installing a car, but instead of pressing a button, you're plugging it. Really well.
How are you mounting it? Just screw?
Yeah, well, the relay is mounted under dash, and our simple goal there is to make sure it's not going to interfere with any of the mechanisms that are being operated underneath. This, as you can see, has a little CV mount thing on the back, if you will. We provide these to the clients for free. Very few of them actually use it, because when a retest occurs while the vehicle is being driven, this display will come on and show a countdown timer to show them the time remaining in the retest. Additionally, there's lights that flash, and there is a beeping noise that comes out of the device in almost every device. Our challenge, obviously, with respect to retest is deaf and hard of hearing customers that we do have. We accommodate those folks with an LED that we put on the dashboard that blinks in the event a test is being requested, because despite the fact that the handset comes on, a lot of customers just set it down in the seat next to them and drive, and they don't see it. And even for people who are not deaf or hard of hearing, I can't control whether their top is down and their stereo is so loud that they can't hear it or see it. And so that happens from time to time. It turns out they have to participate in the program. Yeah.
How long do I have to retest after I get the alert? 5 minutes?
Yeah. Which is ample time. We encourage them to pull over in a safe location, blow their device. As a practical matter, a lot of people do it while they're driving, because it becomes second nature. You don't have to take your eyes off the road to do it. You just pull it up your mouth and blow. But we do ask them to pull over, do it in a safe way.
Hey, it's 5 or 3.
No, it's at least 5.
Yeah.
Any other questions you guys have? Again, just a really high level. We just wanted you to have some understanding of what they are and how they function and operate. Grateful to you for the opportunity to get to visit with council about it, and fellow members to just kind of let you know what it is. And I think we're available if you guys have any questions anytime, not just now, but anytime in the future.
Any council members on WebEx have any questions? All right, David, I'd like to open it to public comment now.
All right, we're taking public comment on ignition interlock discussion. If you'd like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Better yet, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen to raise a hand. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. We're going to take just a couple of seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Looking around, I see no requests. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yeah, thank you so much, David. And actually, everyone, we're just going to take a 5-minute break. So let's just plan to come back at 11:25, and we will start on our business modernization. Thank you. Guys?
Yeah, you start. It's boring as it is. Both of us could go literally all day.
We will come back. Right, should we get to go? All right, so moving on to agenda item number 7. This is going to be our business modernization update. And Jacqueline Castro, our licensing manager, will take it over.
Thank you, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline. I'm the licensing manager for the Bureau, and I will be providing you today with the business modernization update. As mentioned in our last advisory council meeting, the household mover application went online and went live June 1st. So we're super excited about that. Currently, the Bureau has issued a total of 12 household mover permits via the Connect system. With the transition to the new Connect system, we have identified some minor issues both on the Bureau end and on the applicant end. The Bureau and the Connect team are working hard and diligently to make sure that when these issues are identified, that we are finding a workaround so that it doesn't impact the applicant. Please keep in mind that the goal is that the Connect system do what it was intended to do with little to no impact to the applicant. At the last advisory committee meeting, Justin did mention that we were starting to do work under product increment 2, which you will hear me refer to as TI2. In TI2, the team has been working on the quarterly report development and making segue to a completion. We've also submitted language for notices that the permit holders may receive via the Connect system. This could include impending lapse to their insurance, suspension notices, and so forth. The Bureau's also worked on the license maintenance list, and this includes the change of exam qualifier, change of DDAs, removals, additions, cancellations, request for cancellation, request for voluntary suspension, report of equipment, and so forth. In addition, we are also working on the development of the transfer application, and we are making various improvements that we will also be moving forward over to the initial application all in due time. We're aiming to have the transfer application ready by, we're aiming to have the transfer application completed in TI3, which is going to start January of 2024. BCA's iOS team is currently working on the licensing lookup function, and the Bureau will provide you with a completion date at the next advisory council meeting. In the meantime, I do want to mention that applicants and consumers can call the Bureau, and we are able to assist them on the back end with any questions they have in regards to looking up a household mover, excuse me. Lastly, I'm happy to announce that the TMIS conversion is going to be taking place and moving over to the new Connect system on November 30th of this year. The Bureau is working on putting together notices to send out to permit holder users or permit holders to let them know that this change is coming, what the instructions are, how to register for a user account, and also we're trying to get ahead of it so that we can mitigate phone calls and emails as they come in to provide assistance. As we begin TI3 in January 2024, the Bureau will continue to work on the transfer application. We're also going to be working on the household mover exam configuration and the insurance e-filing system. In closing, before I finish my presentation here, I'd like to thank Claire Goldstein, our Bureau Deputy Chief. She has been super instrumental in providing assistance and input in the development of this new project. I'd also like to thank the Connect team for their dedication to this project and their long meetings and responsiveness to our questions and requests. And lastly, I'd like to thank my household mover staff, Avra and Lavinia. Avra and Lavinia have been super instrumental to this program and this process. They've not only been flexible with change, they've also provided excellent customer service to all of our applicants and also to the Bureau when we have questions, when staff is trying to understand how to navigate the Connect system. They have been the go-tos. So thank you to both of the ladies. This basically concludes my presentation for the business modernization update. Do you guys have it? Does the advisory council have any questions? Oh, that makes me really happy. I'd like to open it up for public comment, please.
All right, David, can you open it up to public comment for us?
We're accepting public comment on BizMod. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Let's wait just a couple of seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Just I just have one question. With the announcement for the changes I know a couple permit holders, they're better with email versus mail. So I'm just wondering, are all communication avenues going to include this new information? Is email, fax, just to really get the word out of the change?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. We're actually going to be using email and both mailouts. A lot of the TMIS users, when this program was being run by CQC, didn't have emails in the actual TMIS system. And so we have diligently been trying to collect emails as we, speak to people over the phone. But we do definitely want to send out to all the emails that are in the system currently the notice as well as well. So we'll be doing both. And also making phone calls, right? We want to be proactive in making sure that applicants and TMIS users, not TMIS users, permit holders are assisted with this new transition because it's not easy and we understand that. Okay, I'm going to do quite a bit of talking today because I'm also next for the licensing statistics update. So please turn to agenda item 8A, starting on page 31. The licensing unit oversees 4 distinct areas: electronic appliance repair, service contracts, home furnishing, thermal insulation, and household movers. With the electronic and appliance repair, there was a slight increase from the fourth quarter in license registrations issued, except for a small decrease in electronic service dealers and service contract registrations. In home furnishing and thermal insulation, licenses increased slightly from the fourth quarter with a small decrease in furniture and bedding retailers and importers. I'm happy to report that with the year and half, we are beginning to review applications within 1 week from the receipt date and issuing licenses and registrations within 2 weeks. In addition, the Bureau is also working with licensees that are now operating as a corporation or LLC to ensure their businesses are reflected appropriately in our licensing lookup and also in our records. And we received positive feedback with that. Within household movers, there was a small decrease in the number of new permits issued as of August 31st. The number of total active permits decreased due to quarterly report and annual workers' comp suspensions and permit cancellations. The household mover exam administered continues to have a 90% passing rate. There continues to be a steady increase in the total quarterly report revenue. Please note that the quarterly reports received and the revenue collected as of August 31st will increase as the Bureau continues to receive revenue from the permit holders. You will also notice that the revenue is rather high as of August 31st with a low count of quarterly reports received. This is not an error. We actually did check our data. I think we just found that there's just some money makers out there in the moving industry. In the Connect system, the Bureau again issued a total of 12 household mover permits up to date. While that number is low, we do feel that it's due to a lack of understanding from the applicant's perspective on how to use Connect and or also when receiving deficiency notice, maybe not knowing how to navigate the system. So we have been proactively calling them within a certain amount of time to make sure that they've actually received the email, that it hasn't gone to their spam folder, and then taking the opportunity to explain the process to them and walk them through it. I'd like to also provide a strategic plan update with Strategic Plan 1.1, establishing licensing processes and procedures to streamline workflow. The Bureau is currently establishing processes and procedures for the Connect system, so we don't have an update as of yet. With Strategic Plan 1.2, review and enhance customer service standards to carry out the mission of the Bureau. This is an internal ongoing process. We don't have an update at this time, but I do want to let you know that we are working with applicants using the Connect system to make sure that we're responding within 1 to 2 days and assisting them with any questions they have on how to use it. And Strategic Plan 1.3, continually improve online services to increase compliance and reduce barriers to licensure. Again, the Bureau is working continuously with Connect to assist with reducing barriers to licensure by making improvements as needed. And lastly, in Strategic Plan 1.4, streamline the electronic filing process for insurance companies to decrease reporting timeframes and increase compliance of household movers. We'll be working with the Connect team on this topic in PI3 and will provide updates and refinements regarding the insurance of household movers, for household movers. This concludes the licensing statistical overview. Does the council have any questions? Okay, I'd like to open it up for public comment, please. Can you please open it up for public comment? David?
We are now accepting public comment online. Sorry, I missed, I thought you were opening for public comment in the room.
It's okay.
We are accepting public comment online. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand. Anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a couple seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. I'm so sorry, I'd like to now turn it over to Claire Goldstein, who's going to be giving the admin update.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So I just want to start by noting that the administration manager for the Bureau, Kelly Williams, is absent, so I'm giving this update in her stead. And it starts on page 34 of the packet. I just want to say the administration unit is involved in a lot of essential work around the Bureau, but for this update, I'm going to primarily focus on hiring, and that's where we've been putting a huge amount of effort to try to address our vacancy rate. And I do want to start by thanking Marie Boutier, who is the Bureau's personnel analyst, who's been working incredibly hard to move this process forward. It's a very lengthy process in the state with a lot of steps, and she's juggling that for multiple recruitments at the same time. So, and as you hopefully can see in the packet on page 34, we've been doing a lot of hiring. I do want to, since the June council meeting, I know, I thought it was a lot. Well timed. So I do want to mention two in particular. One is Alda Aguirre, who is our youth enforcement chief, and the other is Jacob Egger, who is the senior environmental scientist who's overseeing the lab. We'll be hearing from each of them in a few minutes, but I did want to just say that. The packet material, the charts in the packet are the status, there's our snapshot as of September 15th. I do have a couple of updates since then. On the second chart on page 34, the recruitment and process, I'm really pleased to share that we have the office technician for enforcement is actually going to be starting at the Bureau on Monday of next week. And then one of the investigator positions in enforcement, she will be beginning on November 1st. So that's really good news. And then the other chart, which is on page 5 of the packet, I think Justin mentioned this earlier. We have 2 analyst vacancies in enforcement that comprise the case management unit. We're really excited that those job advertisements are out. And hopefully we'll be doing interviews over the next few weeks and get those positions filled. I know this came up at the June Advisory Council meeting that a decision was made to reduce the extensiveness of the background for special investigators. We really anticipate that that's going to speed up the hiring process. I believe the person who's starting in November, it was close to 3 months for the background check. So anything we can do to try to accelerate that and get those vacancies filled without jeopardizing any, concerns for the Bureau. And so once we have the 2 managers in the north and the south, which is a huge priority for us, they can begin building their own teams and recruiting for those special investigator positions. I just want to mention a couple things about telework. The Bureau does continue to recognize the importance of telework, both for employee recruitment as well as having people continue to stay. So right now, the staff in all the units at the Bureau are working on a hybrid schedule. They work from home some days, they come in some days on a set schedule. We make sure there's sufficient coverage in the office. And managers are closely monitoring that to make sure that work productivity does not suffer in any way. It's been well received across the units. And I think I can say with confidence the option for telework has definitely expanded our pool of applicants as we're trying to fill the vacancies, as well as the quality of applicants that we might have not otherwise seen. So I think we're really seeing the benefits of that. And then just briefly, sort of connect all of this to the strategic plan objectives for what is technically called organizational development, I believe. So the efforts to prioritizing hiring for all the managers, we have broadened where we advertise job openings on social media, LinkedIn, Top of the Morning Report, offering the telework option, as I mentioned. I think all of these sort of address the first three strategic plan objectives, which are to implement effective staff recruitment, identify and implement ways to attract and increase the number of qualified candidates, and increase the speed with which vacancies are filled with a goal of a vacancy rate of 10%. Based on these recent updates over the last couple of days, if we include all the recruitments that are in process, we have interviews or conditional job offers, assuming that all of those pan out and we fill all of those positions, that would reduce our vacancy rate to 14%, which is a really significant improvement from where we've been. It's really important for staff morale, so that people don't feel like they're having to do the work of so many people. Bringing in new people, new energy, new ideas is really welcome. The other two strategic objectives are to create comprehensive training plans, which I think Jacqueline also alluded to, is in the process across all the units. And the last item is to facilitate staff team building. In addition to a new staff orientation that was held in May, which was reported on at the June Council meeting, we are currently planning another staff event later this month up here in Sacramento. Justin and I are going to be traveling down to Southern California the first week of November to meet with staff. And then we are also planning for an annual enforcement training where the enforcement staff from around the state will come up to Sacramento for at least one full day, 2 days of training, and that will be up here in Sacramento. We are trying to address that strategic plan objective as well. So that concludes my attempt to be Kelly Williams. So are there any questions from the council members? Any questions from council members on the WebEx?
Did you just call for public comment on WebEx?
I was just about to, so you're perfect timing, yes.
Sorry, it's a little tough to hear. We're now accepting public comment.
Yes, public comment, thank you.
We're now accepting public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Better yet, raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen or dialing *3 if you're a call-in user. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Okay, so I am now going to turn it over to Jacob Eggers, who will give the update on the lab.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Eggers. I am the Bureau's new lab manager. You stuck with me for a bit, it looks like. I'm going to give a couple updates before we get into statistics. The first being lab vacancies. The lab currently has 4 vacancies, one being the environmental scientist position, the 2 laboratory technician positions. These are the people who are breaking down the furniture and doing a lot of the flammability testing. And then the laboratory analyst position, which is doing a lot of thermal directory and a lot of like the paperwork stuff and analytical duties. The environmental scientist position should be posted shortly. For the laboratory technician and the laboratory analyst, these are going to take a little longer because we're waiting on the reclassification. So it's basically paperwork on my side. So you can blame me for it. Now, the next update is for thermal insulation manufacturers. The January 2024 Directory of Certified Insulation Materials, or as I'm going to refer to it, the Thermal Insulation Directory. The directory lists all certified insulation products for sale and use in the state of California. And some important deadlines are November 15th, 2023. This is to change your listings if you are a manufacturer and you're changing listings. And then also December 15th, this is when all directory fee payments are going to be due. If either of these deadlines are missed, you'll be taken out of the thermal directory, and then also California Building Standards Commission will also be notified. And lastly, of updates is outreach. So the 2024 IAPFLO, or the International Association of Bedding and Furniture Labeling Officials conference, will be in Fort Smith, Virginia, and this is on the week of April 24th, 2024. Justin and I plan to attend. And the following year will be in California, just as a note. Now, we're going to get into statistics, and these start on page 37 of the packet. The first page is for Technical Bulletin 117-2013, and this is California's smolder resistance test for filling materials used in upholstered furniture. Over the last 4 quarters, TB 117-2013 had a 99% pass rate. The numbers do look a little goofy because there was 1 inconclusive sample and December 31st, 2022, or the quarter ending in December 31st, 2022. And then also 3 in the quarter ending with June 30th, 2023. Inconclusive samples are not factored into the pass rate since they require additional testing before we can really give it a pass or fail. And for the second table on page 37, this table is TB 117-2013 failures broken down by manufacturing locations. There was only 1 failure in the quarter ending 3/31/2023, and this was from a manufacturer outside the U.S. Now moving on to the next page, or page 38, this is for 16 CFR 1633, and this is the federal government's open flame test for mattress tests. And in the past 2 quarters, the lab significantly increased mattress testing, and although this is moving in the right direction, we still have a lot to figure out. We expect to be able to test around 80 mattresses per year without affecting any other tests or testing. Right now it's a little hard because we don't have enough staff for the burn room, so I'm working on that. And I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing about lab vacancies, and I'm kind of tired of talking about it, so hopefully it's fixed in. And lab staff really is just kind of spread thin between daily operations, accreditation, and thermal insulation directory. So really hoping that we can fill positions fairly quickly. And even though we're trending in the right direction for mattress testing, in summer months and then the cold, rainy winter months, testing isn't able to be done for mattresses. The conditions of testing just can't be met in the burn room. Also, it was brought up in the last advisory council meeting that we should contact CPSC to determine if they're getting the same results we are. CPSC, we reached out, and CPSC actually does testing and sampling in a different way. They do it based off of complaints and violations rather than random inspections that the Bureau does. We do a little bit of sampling based off the complaints, but most of it is for random inspections. Our pass rate for mattresses is 61%. There's a lot more failures than what we expect, but we still don't really have enough information to really determine if this is a trend, but it's definitely on our radar. And we expect to have a large uptick in mattress testing in the coming spring and fall months when we're able to test again. And moving to the second table on page 38, this is 16 CFR 1633. failures by manufacturing locations. It's pretty much the same across the board. It seems like everybody's kind of failing this test. And then moving on to thermal insulation testing, which is on page 39 of the packet.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can I ask a question about the NAPRS and the CPSC? What did they say their failure rate was? Did they say?
They do it based off of complaints, so it was a lot higher than ours. I'm not sure if I can really share it, because it's not really my information to share. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Now for thermal insulation, this is on page 39 of the packet. Over the past few quarters, you might notice that no insulation samples were tested. And the reason for that is that the lab changed the procedure of how insulation is picked up. Before it was just once a year, but now we're changing it to happen twice a year. So one time in June and one time in December. This past June, we ordered 12 samples. We got them in at the end of July and early August. We just haven't had enough time to test the samples yet. All are logged in and some have been tested, but this table is based off of completion dates, so nothing's been fully completed yet. And a lot has to do with calibrations of equipment. There's a lot of different pieces of equipment that have to go out for calibration. They're kind of all at different times, so we're working on kind of streamlining it. And also, we hope to have all these samples tested before the next batch in December, so stay tuned. And now turning to page 40 of the packet, we have bedding testing. Bedding testing is compliance for finish size and net weight, so that's on the wall label. Overall, we have a 67% pass rate. And the second table on page 40 is bedding failures split among manufacturing locations. And I noticed this in the last advisory council meeting. There seems to be that manufacturers are unclear how the Bureau regulates finish size and how it's measured. So we're working on getting some FAQs and also releasing the procedures for how we do this test. And that's turning to page 41 of the packet. This is a table titled BHUG's Laboratory Testing Totals. And this is a table that includes TB117, 16 CFR 1633, bedding and thermal insulation test results. This doesn't have anything to do with label review or flame retardant chemical testing, but the overall test results are 82%. Now, moving on to flame retardant chemical labeling and testing. This starts on page 42. The first table that you'll see on 42 is a table for the statement analysis. So this is really who's checking the no added flame retardant chemicals or added flame retardant chemicals on the flammability label. Overall, 97% of samples in the past 4 months had no added flame retardant chemicals checked on the flammability label. It turns out nobody's checking that they do contain it, but there are a few that have no boxes checked at all, 3 total. 2 of the items with the blank boxes, two items had no boxes checked on the flammability statement, while one actually was made and manufactured before SB 1019 came into effect. So that one sample does not affect the pass result or the percentages for this table. For the second table on 42, this is samples that were sent to DTSC for chemical analysis for anything that had no added flame retardant chemicals checked on the label. In the past 2 quarters, we didn't send any samples to DTSC for analysis because we were waiting on a contract. It just turns out that early last week, the contract was finalized, so we're planning to send samples out by the end of the month of October. And now turning to page 43, we start to address label results. Label reviews conducted on mattresses, upholstered furniture, and bedding products. Insulation samples don't have wall labels, so they're not included in this number. On average, we're seeing only about 18% of labels having no violations. And These labels with no issues are receiving full reimbursement, while 25% had minor violations which received a discrepancy notice and reimbursement paperwork. 39% had moderate violations which would receive a discrepancy notice and a non-reimbursement notification. And 18% had major violations which would not be reimbursed and would be sent over to enforcement for enforcement action against the manufacturer. Now, the graph at the bottom of page 43 is the same data in a more digestible form. Dark green being no violations, light green being minor violations, and yellow being moderate violations, with red being major violations. And now turning to page 44 of the packet, we break down label violations by manufacturing locations, and it turns out that, everybody's really having issues with law labels. And you might notice that actually other states outside of California don't have this, and that's really just based off of low sampling numbers. Now moving on to page 45, this was requested in the last advisory council meeting to give examples of labeling violations on furniture. And this list highlights some of the most common violations, but is not a comprehensive list. So the first section being minor violations. These violations are smaller things like spelling errors, typos, the wrong form on the building materials. This could be polyester fiber instead of polyester fiber batting, shredded foam instead of polyurethane foam pad. Minor violations will be reimbursed with a discrepancy notice to inform the manufacturer what the issues are on the law label. But there's a caveat for this. If a label has 5 unique minor violations, it will be treated as a moderate violation, which will not be reimbursed. Now, the second section is a moderate violation. These products would not get reimbursement, and it would also be sent a labeling discrepancy. The most common moderate violations are percentages being off and finish size being wrong. No number of moderate violations will bump the product to a major violation. And then lastly, samples with major violations will be sent over to enforcement for enforcement action. And the most common major violations are missing law labels, flammability labels, and also building materials just not listed on the law label that's present in the product. So are there any questions?
Yeah, Jake, so on the, looks like on the labeling, 23, you have consent for enforcement.
This was on
page 43. So I'm just curious how many of those have been completed? The enforcement actions, and are we getting any response from manufacturers?
I'm not too sure how many have gone through yet. Once it kind of goes from the lab, we don't really touch it too much unless we're asked to be in on those meetings.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering. So you just hand it off?
Yeah. Then we do get some contacts, but we don't have enough people in the lab to really keep checking in. So that's something that we'll definitely do in the future.
So there's a monthly meeting on lab failures, and right now, Scott in the compliance unit is handling the enforcement action. I know of one where we're entering a stipulated agreement, and we're actually working with the AG's office on that one. And then there's quite a few others in the pipeline. So I can make sure you get statistics for the next meeting. I just don't have the number in front of me.
I guess having, for the major violations, having an enforcement action and then publicizing, or at least letting the manufacturers know that they're doing it, might help getting the rates up.
Oh, so I'm happy to report a couple things here. So I'm very much looking forward to the outreach, not the, what are they called? The community, outreach. The outreach manager position, it's got a different name, I just don't remember what it is right now. We are going to kind of use public opinion to shake a few people. But what we can do in the enforcement section is we can do a lab failure section. I think that would be helpful for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Justin, if I may, so Jake, thank you so much for the presentation. Not only for what you shared with us today, but the way it's presented. Very, very informative. Just like to pick up on one thing you said about the FAQs. I cannot overemphasize the value of FAQs to share with the industry to kind of as an educational piece. to help the industry to, get compliant. Particularly the list of minor and moderate. I had a general understanding of what it was, but seeing it here and perhaps seeing it in an FAQ, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Well, and we're certainly going to put it in the FAQ. We actually have quite a few on our website that we'd like to consolidate. That's going to be something that we'll ask to do in conjunction with the manager I just referred to that will be named Outreach until otherwise invited. But in addition to that, it'll actually probably be part of the rulemaking because at the moment, I'm going to emphasize this for Michael, so I don't get a bad look. These are guidelines. They're not rules of general applicability. They will be too. Okay. Yeah.
Excuse me, Bert Grimes again. I'd like to first compliment you on giving some explanations and the footnotes on the tables. They really help. Can you hear me?
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And second of all, hopefully with the new label regulations going through, we should see a decrease in especially the label moderate violations. So I'm saying on the FAQs, we might want to wait until the label regulations come through, the new ones. Which, any idea, Justin, when that will be?
Yeah, so legal did a first pass at it. We've done edits. Now I really am waiting for the policy position to be filled. The good news on the policy position is we're in the final stages of that recruitment. So there's been a candidate selected. There's just like a few more pieces of paperwork before we can actually negotiate a start date with that individual. But I'll be very excited to announce, once that's official, I'll send an email to the council announcing who that individual is and what their start date is. And one of the first things they're going to do right off the bat is meeting with Jacob and his team to do some refinements in the package so we can get it back over to legal.
Okay, is there any time limit on
so I'm
this?
still in the back and forth, Bert, but so what I'll promise you, Bert, is I'm still in the refinement phase of it, but we'll get done with that fairly soon.
Thank you.
And along with that rulemaking, when that rulemaking actually is starting to reach the final phases, so probably around the time we're preparing what's called a final statement of reasons, that's when a different manager, the outreach manager, will be working with Jacob and his team for the FAQs, any sort of advisory notes, things of that nature. And just sort of kind of clean up that part of our website. There's quite a few documents, and it's a little unwieldy right now, and that's going to be their focus.
One final question. I don't know if we were looking at the ETSC program and deciding whether it should continue. It seems like you're not sending a lot of samples there, and the number that are failing seems to be pretty low over the last couple of years.
I think I'll speak. I actually would like to send more samples to see if that's the case, because I'm worried about a small population size. So now that the contract's in place, and again, COVID was weird for us because of accreditation. So what I'd like to do is go hot and heavy for a little while, and then if that proves to be true, then you may be right.
How many are you expecting to send?
The contract limits us. I think the contract limits us to what?
I think it's about 16 for a contract cycle.
So the next contract negotiation, I want to up it.
Yeah, because I think if you get 16 tested, you'll have a really good idea of the statistics will be a lot better.
I think a lot of that has to do with which samples we've been picking. And it seems like when we see like a shredded polyurethane foam or shredded foam, we get a lot more hits with that. So that's something that we're going to focus in on a lot more, I think. Yeah.
And I was hoping to get an XRF, but Jacob, you just want to briefly speak to the meeting you sort of had with ETSC recently, and just sort of, we may be looking for different equipment to sort of do an initial scan.
Yeah, so when we went over to DPSC, it was about a month ago actually, and we asked about the handheld XRF. They basically said like for what we're screening for, it's not super helpful. It's really the next step that they do that they really get hit on. So kind of misses an important element. Can we open up to council comment? Oh, public comment, sorry.
Public comment online is requested. We're accepting public comment online, I guess. If you'd like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Better yet, raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. We're going to take just a couple of seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes. All right, so that concludes the last section. I'm going to turn it over to Aldo, our new enforcement chief, so give it up to Aldo.
Thank you, Jacob. Okay, you guys hear me okay? All right, so I'm gonna get started. So I'm providing an enforcement program update and statistical review. During the review, I will also provide an update on our strategic objectives for the consumer protection and enforcement section of our strategic plan. And I'm doing this in any particular order, just as the highlights are listed in the printed material. So for investigation highlights, I'm going to start with the district attorney offices and our communication with them. We've continued to attend those task force meetings. We've discussed sweeps, and by sweeps, I mean this is a proactive enforcement that we target a specific area that has little communication with that area. So in particular, I'll talk about the latest sweep, which was in the San Diego County. We targeted a specific area and visited businesses that were electronic and appliance repair, home furnishings and thermal installation, and household movers. So we've had plans with both San Diego and another district attorney office for our current sweep coming up soon. When it comes to our strategic plan and leveraging the Bureau's memorandum of agreement with the Federal Motor Carrier and Safety Administration to protect California consumers from unpermitted interstate movers, I'm going to discuss that our enforcement staff has assisted with former California consumers who had their belongings picked up in California and moved to another state. We had a consumer who moved to Texas and their items were stored in a storage unit in Texas. We were able to negotiate the reduction of the household mover fees. And as a result of negotiating that reduction in fees, the consumer was able to pay those fees and get their belongings. We also have another consumer who we assisted with the release of their goods, and that was in the state of Montana. And just to let everybody know, I'm starting on page 47. Our next strategic objective is implementing proactive enforcement and sting operations to enhance consumer protection and increase permitted household movers in the state. And although we're not conducting stings at this time, we are waiting until the supervisors are hired to start that, and that's hopefully in 2024, that we'll be able to start conducting stings again, but we are conducting sweeps that are targeting these unlicensed businesses.
and we're scheduling them on a monthly basis. And the counties that we're picking are throughout the state. So one could be in Southern California, another in Central, another in Northern and Southern. So as a part of that San Diego sweep that I mentioned earlier, that sweep was conducted on September 6th and 7th in San Diego County. 24 businesses were visited during that sweep, and 14 citations were issued for delinquent businesses. 11 were electronic and appliance repair, and 3 were home furnishings and thermal insulation. For the next strategic plan, which talks about establishing processes and procedures and enforcement operations to ensure accountability of all regulated populations. With the triage process, when we receive complaints, I, along with our compliance unit manager, Shelby Norman, have started that in June, began reviewing all incoming complaints so that we could see exactly what type of complaints were coming in, how they were being triaged, and to make decisions on whether these would be desk investigations or field investigations. We also provided or developed a procedure and process for sending cease letters to unlicensed businesses. So there's some businesses that we will send cease letters to let them know we are aware that they exist. We know they're operating and they're unlicensed, and so we're giving them an opportunity to submit an application before we go visit them. Since April of this year, we have sent 44 cease letters to household movers. And as I'm building the enforcement program, I have started to capture more of these numbers so that we can include them in the packet. Next, I'm moving on to page 48 and highlighting some consumer business assistance. And I've listed several cases where enforcement has assisted consumers with negotiating refunds, reductions in fees, and the release of property without having to pay additional fees. These examples that are listed, and these are just some examples, add up to about $25,000 between May and August of 2023. And that doesn't include an actual restoration company where the insurance was paying the restoration company $34,000 for moving services. However, they were not permitted, so that money was not paid to that company. Another one of our sections for the strategic plan is annually soliciting input from our partners on industry trends, business practices to ensure the Bureau uses up-to-date enforcement/investigative practices. And although our strategic plan is to do this annually, this is something we do regularly. If we get a complaint at the Bureau and it is about a specific program or somebody, a specific industry, we will reach out to these partners to ask for questions about how they process something or something that we might need specific information before we start our investigation. Then we have the section regarding coordinating outreach to local law enforcement and local prosecutors to increase cooperation among different agencies. This section is actually going to be covered by Claire later on in the presentation. So next, I'm moving on to page 49, where we start with the complaint intake statistics. And as I mentioned, starting in June, we started to review those complaints that came in. The number for complaints received have remained steady in all 3 programs, with a slight increase in household mover cases as a peak of moving season progresses. On page 50, we list the desk investigations. And if you take a look at the numbers, you'll see an increase in electronic and appliance repair and home furnishing and thermal insulation complaints during the quarter ending in June 30th and of August 1st, including 24 household mover complaints that were assigned to desk investigations. And you can turn to page 51, where we provide the charts for field investigations. Similar to desk investigations, there has been a significant increase in field investigations for electronic and appliance repair complaints, and a slight increase in home furnishings and thermal insulation complaints. And the bottom of page 51, we list the enforcement program citations assessed. The focus of our investigations has been in consumer assistance, and it shows with a decrease in citations issued and the retirement of our home furnishing and thermal insulation inspector and the promotion of our electronic and appliance repair field representatives. So those two staff members solely focused on either the home furnishings and thermal insulation program or the electronic and appliance repair program. But because one of those staff members is retiring, we now spread that word throughout the investigators. And so instead of having somebody that's just solely focused on the one program. And then the chart on page 8 that Justin discussed earlier about the citation fines collected, that will appear in this section moving forward. And then we turn to page 52, where we list the recovery and hold hostage numbers, and those numbers, there really hasn't been much of a change with those numbers. And moving forward, we will also be consolidating the desk investigation and field investigation. I think that added to the confusion in the past. And mostly what the council has been interested in is the processing of these complaints. So we're going to put that information together and make it a little clearer. Are there any questions from the council members? Can we open it to public comment online?
We are now accepting public comment online for item 8D. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. I will now turn things over to Claire Goldstein.
And thank you, Alda. I'm back, not being Kelly Williams this time, but to be the Outreach and Education Coordinator, which I'm also not. So I'm going to give the update on communications and education that starts on page 54 of the packet. As Justin mentioned a few minutes ago, we have begun the recruitment process to hire what I'm calling the Outreach and Education Manager. And so once that person's in place, which we hope will be in the not too distant future, we anticipate an increase in various outreach and education activities around the Bureau. We expect that person may also want to hire a student assistant to provide some additional part-time support. So that will help as well. In the meantime, Bureau staff from both licensing and enforcement have continued to assist with outreach events throughout the state. And that's detailed on pages 54 and 55 in the packet. Most of those have focused on consumer outreach. There have been some, as Alda alluded to, there have been some conversations with other agencies at the state and local level to coordinate enforcement actions and to share information. We are also continuing as we can to update existing publications
We are working on a brochure that's going to provide a really good overview of all the Bureau programs. We are making changes to the website as we can. We've updated our contact us page to make it easier for people to direct their question to the appropriate person. We've updated our complaint forms to fix some technical glitches to make it easier for consumers as well as staff when they receive those complaints. But again, with dedicated staff, with an outreach coordinator, and it's elusive student assistant that I keep talking about. Hopefully that work will continue and increase. So once those people are in place, the Bureau has identified 4 communication and education priorities that come out of the strategic plan. These are things we've identified that the goal is to accomplish these in the first year once that team's in place, just to allow the Bureau to reach the primary audiences of consumers, applicants, and licensees. So we would want to continue to update the existing outreach materials and to develop new materials to make sure that that information is accurate and up to date for all 3 program areas. We would like to launch virtual applicant workshops. I'm looking at Jacqueline for the household mover program with the new online application to help people walk them through that. Ideally, that would expand over time as the other 2 programs also have their online application, functional. We talked about putting together an annual newsletter that would go out to licensees highlighting important information, legal changes, changes in process, general things that the Bureau is doing that will affect their license. And the big one, which is really high on everybody's list, high on my list, is to spearhead the revamping of the website. That needs a visual overhaul, I think. It needs overhaul of the navigation. Some stuff should come off. It should be easier to find what you're looking for. We want to make sure that everything on there is updated. And that's a huge undertaking that involves Bureau staff, also involves staff from the Department of Consumer Affairs and their technology team. So it's a huge amount of coordination. But it's such an essential thing because that's where most people are going. That's probably most people's first experience with the Bureau is the website. So I saved it for last, but it's probably really at the top of the list of priorities. So anyhow, so that concludes that update. Are there any questions from the council members in the room? Any questions from council members on the WebEx? Hearing none. David, could you please open it up for public comment online?
We are taking comments on agenda item 9. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. Anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing none, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you. I am going to turn it over to Justin, who is going to give the policy and legislative update.
Well, everyone, we're nearing the end, but I'm also feeling the warmth of this room build by a show of just hands. Who wants to take a break and who wants me to just power through? Raise your hand if you want a break. All right, power through. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 10, SB 814. It's actually on page 59 of your packet. I've already alluded to this, but on October 8th, the governor signed the bill, so you are stuck with us for 4 more years. The next sunset review will be in 2027. I've already spoke about the merger of the funds. Just a reminder, July 1, I think we're calling it the Household Goods and Services Fund. That's the new name of the fund. All 3 will go into that. The 3 older funds will exist for some time. I think it's about 3 to 5 years, and with very small balances, and then just to sort of finish up various accounting things that don't happen overnight. But the bulk of the funds will go into that new fund on July 1. A couple of other things I'll note. I provided a lot of detail on page 59 and 60, but just a couple of things I wanted to highlight, the larger items. For those interested in HUFTE, the document requirements that were associated with flame retardant chemicals, those are gone. They were always really difficult for manufacturers to maintain just because the supply chain can get very complicated. So at this point, those document requirements are gone. The expectation, though, is you are confident there are no added flame retardant chemicals in your product. And then also for household movers, for applicants, the financial disclosures, you no longer have to do that. It was incredibly confusing to applicants, and I just don't actually have auditors to confirm if any of this is true anyway. So the application process as of January 1 will get more simple for household mover applicants. We're still relying and buttressing on the fact that there are various insurance requirements that all permittees have to adhere to make consumers whole. I'll leave it at that high level, but if anyone has any questions about any other aspects of the bill, please let me know. I'm happy to speak to them. So I'll open it up to council members in the room first. Council members online. David, would you mind opening it up to public comment? Oh, yes.
Okay, sorry. One of the problems was the statewide withhold from sale program. Is that no longer in effect? Or we cannot do it where we have?
Statewide withhold from. Yeah, the statewide, we were seeking to make it far more robust. It was never added to the bill. So it essentially stays as is. And I'm going to try for it again during the next sunset review process. But essentially, the way that the bill proceeded through the legislature, there are no changes to that program, Bert.
Okay, so in other words, if one product is defective and there's 100 products that's still on the floor, you can only withhold that one product, correct?
Correct. My hope is when we have the outreach person here and we can actually withhold a product and go through the entire citation process, I'd like to work with Michael on how we can essentially disclose that. I can't legally do essentially a product recall for everything in the state, but I can make consumers aware that there is a problem with this particular item. And I'll try to publicize that if that makes sense. But again, I am going to try to make the statewide withhold from sale more robust in the next sunset review process.
Thank you.
David, would you mind opening to public comment on the WebEx?
We are accepting public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen to raise your digital hand. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Looking around, I see no request for public comment. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And now I'm going to turn to the agenda item 10B. But what I actually like to do, because the update is really going to be the same for B, C, and D, I'm just going to speak to all of them right now. Again, the household mover regulation update, we're essentially just working on a budget document, which is known as a 399, so we're very close on that one. I already alluded to the upholstered furniture law label. We're still doing a back and forth to make refinements to that, but that is going to be a priority for that policy manager position, and I will make an announcement to the Bureau once I've secured a start date for that individual. We're really excited for them to come on. They've got a great background. The house, in a matter of triage, the household mover enforcement regulation is number one because we're almost there. And then the number two is the license label, and then after that is the household mover license regulation, just so you have sort of a sense of triage of what we're going to be working on. Behind those is going to be disciplinary guidelines for all three of our acts, because it's been some time since we've made refinements to those. So that's essentially the Bureau's triage list at the moment for its regulatory sort of package. And again, I'll make an announcement once we actually have that person negotiate the start date. So with that, I'll open it first to the council for just any questions on the regulation. Any council members online? David, would you mind opening it up to public comment? Online.
We are taking public comment on the rest of item 10. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a couple of seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests, do you wish to continue?
Yeah, thank you. I think what I'll do here also, I'm going to provide a verbal update on these three bills, which is AB 1059, 244, and SB 271, and then I'll sort of hold for comment at that point. AB 1059 is probably the one with the most workload associated with the Bureau. This is essentially checking mattresses and juvenile products for fiberglass that's contained in them. This bill was signed by the governor on October 8th, and so it will take effect January 1. We've identified one additional environmental scientist that we're going to seek based on this bill, as well as some equipment purchases we may need to be making just to ensure implementation of this. We're also working with, I always forget the ISPA's name, International Sleep Products Association, just to get some samples to make sure our breakdown is robust. We'll start working on a technical bulletin associated with this. Once we have it available, we'll publish it. But we essentially plan to start doing breakdowns of mattresses on this item with 2024. Moving on to SB 244, the Right to Repair Act. Again, this is making sure that there's documentation and parts for any sort of consumer electronics that's $50 or more. The governor signed this on October 10th. This is very similar to a lot of what they call right to repair laws. The one that I'm most familiar with was in New York. Essentially, California is just joining these ranks. While we regulate these entities, there's not actually workload associated with the Bureau. My guess is our call volume will go up a bit just so we can explain to individual consumers what their rights are under this law that takes effect January 1. But I'm not foreseeing a lot of changes in workload. And then moving just to the last bill, which is on page 113 for your reference, SB 271. This is the right to repair for powered wheelchairs. The governor actually vetoed this bill on October 7th. He actually cited concerns with essentially prior authorizations with Medicare. Even though he vetoed the bill, he has asked the Department of Healthcare Services to sort of look into the regulations associated with this to see if it can be addressed through those means. I'm not sure if a member will be, Senator Dodd will be bringing the bill again next year or not, but we'll continue to monitor it. So I ran through that relatively quickly, but at this point, I'll pause for questions from the council.
I think just more of a clarification to understand it, really digging too far into it. On the Right to Repair Act, that's requiring, if you're going to manufacture or sell something in the state of California, a certain price range, you have to have the ability for that consumer to have it repaired.
Correct. Correct. So it's essentially making sure that there's materials available to anyone who wants to make a repair on a particular product. So like manufacturer specifications, as well as making sure there isn't an embargo on parts. For your particular products, my understanding is you essentially are leasing to the individuals who are using it, so it wouldn't affect you.
But I was thinking more of like if I bought a car stereo.
Yes, that would apply. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So like a car stereo, this is huge for phones and laptops, those would apply.
So for the manufacturer to make sure that set of repairs are available, or?
Yes, it's up to the manufacturer to make sure that parts are available as well as documentation is available. Any questions from council members on WebEx? David, would you mind opening us public comment online?
We are open once again for agenda item 10. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Looking around, I see no request for public comment. Do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you so much. So we will actually move on to agenda item number 11, just confirming future meeting dates. So this is, I may have to exchange text messages with an individual who wasn't able to make it here today, so just bear with me and I ask for your patience while we do this. A couple of items first. This year, we had 3 meetings, which I thought was appropriate. We're in a sunset year. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of review. I wanted to make sure you were informed. I heard from some council members that they have a preference in 2024 for 2 meetings. I think that that's reasonable, just sort of based on the workload. And I'm also happy to provide the council sort of updates on how we're doing on hiring and things of that nature in the interim. But I essentially just wanted to open it to comment first from the council members about if they had a preference between 2 or 3.
For required that.
There's no legal requirement. It's essentially, I'm just trying to make sure I'm keeping you and the public informed. My assessment is, and actually I'll speak for Mr. Weitekamp in just a minute too, because he's made his comments to me. My assessment is I'll probably have a bit of a longer meeting, but I'll have more content for you for 2. I think 3, I'm kind of stretching it. But again, if the council would like 3, I'm happy to. Now, with that being said, Mr. Weitekamp would like 3 next year, so that's his recommendation to the committee or to the council. You might turn on your mic, sorry.
Maybe there's a percentage of the meetings that we have to attend. So there was 3.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna put you on the hook for all of them. Sorry, Dan.
In person overnight. I'm not partial.
Not partial.
I didn't mind the 3 meetings.
Okay. Any I have no.
Keepers here remotely. I mean, I'm fine with 2.
What were you feeling? Do you feel like 2 or 3?
I think 2 would be nice with maybe a little update in between, a short update from you about the progress and ongoings. I don't think you need to make, if you have an update, doesn't need to be as extensive as the one that we got today.
Okay. I think we'll start with 2, and if necessity demands 1, I'll probably just have to schedule 1. So, for example, here's an example of maybe there's a major bill next year that's introduced that really will affect operations. Then maybe I will call for another just based on how that's progressing, something of that nature. All right. So with that being said, if everyone wants to turn sort of the last page on their packet, it's like a calendar. Looking at the legislative calendar for 2 items. My guess is you probably want somewhere in May and then somewhere in October. The May, you'll basically know what's around, what's been introduced, and what's likely to move through the legislative process by that point. Your May revise, just some certainties about the budget. I'll have some fairly crisp numbers on my actual budget for the year, my fund condition. And then October, I can actually report to you kind of, okay, what's become law. Does anyone have conferences or anything that really impedes? We'll start with May first. First week? Okay. And is that the first, second, and third, or you mean the next?
Oh, no,
okay, perfect, okay. Anybody else?
Through the 22nd.
Say again?
20th through the 22nd, I have a conference.
Okay, 20th to the 22nd. Okay. So far, we're still, the mid is looking good. Donald doesn't care, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Is that looking good for you, Pascal?
Yes, I was looking at the week of actually, I was looking at the week of May 12th or 13th, so the 16th maybe.
The 16th. How does the 16th look to you, Tom and Bert?
This is Bert. The 16th is fine.
This is Capers. Fine here too.
Okay. I'm gonna soft put in for May 16th, and then I'm just communicating with someone who works at the MSA to make sure that that will work for Steve as well. I'm just gonna circle that for a moment. And then looking in October, does everyone mind looking at their October schedule just to see if there's any conferences or anything? Oh, you got a bad one. Oh, you're good to go. Let the record reflect I'm talking to Michael. Sorry.
At the moment, my October is really terrible.
Okay.
So I think you should set it. I have a trial in October, so you guys should set it, and it may be an excused absence, or
I got it.
I'll make it.
The first and second week for me in October is out.
Okay. Pascal, should we try for early November? Then you can really hold me to account for regulations, because by then I better be done.
Perhaps maybe November 7th.
Do it on October 31st. Costumes are required.
Yeah. Got it. Okay.
The 16th or 14th.
So far, I'm hearing the first week in November. Hopefully, we're not interfering with anyone's holiday schedules yet. How's November 7th work for you?
Yeah, this is Bert. That's fine.
Okay.
Sorry, which date is it? November?
Thursday, November 7th, Tom.
Yeah, it's probably good to be in the right year. Thank you. Yeah, that looks fine here.
Wait, I'm sorry, Tom?
I was looking at 2023. I'm like, it's not a Thursday, so it's good. It's fine here.
All right. I am going to tentatively put that in. I'm rudely exchanging text with someone at TM today, so I'm sorry about that, everyone. But I think that's going to work. They're checking right now. So what I will do is I'm just going to hold this item open for just a minute, and then we'll come back to it just so I give them the opportunity to comment. But right now, so David, I'm going to do it again just for formality purposes, but if there's anyone a member of the public who wants to comment on the 2 or 3, it's probably a good idea to hear from them at this point. So you can open that up to public comment.
All right, public comment on the calendar. If you have an opinion on 2 or 3 meetings, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand. And anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to leave this open while we wait for a text message to come back.
All right. With that being said, I'd like to announce that Donald Lucas, who's been with the council for quite a long time, is retiring. I'm very jealous. Hopefully he's going to be doing a lot of traveling. Don has pulled me out of the fire, literally because we burn things here, and also figuratively in these council meetings when I stick my foot in my mouth. Don, you've always provided just sort of excellent insight into sort of the needs that our lab needs, with an appreciation from the outside and a focus on consumers. It's really second to none. I just really appreciate all you've done for the Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, and I would like to extend my thanks to the Bureau staff, leadership, because they've been very responsive, especially I'd like to thank my fellow council members. because I think it's been a valuable experience, and I hope we've earned it to the advancement. I think the Bureau is doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, John. I'll hold it up in case anyone else wants to teach it before we move on.
I just want to say, Don, it's been a pleasure working with you on the council. You always brought wonderful insights, and your questions were always on point. And so even though I don't always agree with everything that you asked and you supported, I totally respect everything you brought to the table, and really appreciate it.
I appreciate your participation in the advisory, which you invested in the endeavors you have going forward. I hope nothing but the best.
Hey,
Don,
go ahead.
Yeah, Don, I just want to tell you, I think you and I are the two oldest council members, both in time serving and age. But I certainly appreciated all the time and effort you put in. And also, I really appreciated your insight and your level-headedness.
Thank you, Bert.
All right, just before we wrap up the meeting, I know the meeting dates that we've tentatively set. Any future agenda items individuals would like to see for the next council meeting, which looks like it'll be May 16th. And then May 16th works for Steve. I just want to ask, I'm waiting to hear back, but just as a possible alternative, is everyone available November 14th, or is that too close to the holidays?
That works for me.
Okay. The 14th, does the 14th work for? Okay. Bert and Tom, does November 14th work for your schedules?
Yes, prefer the 7th, but 14th can work too.
Okay. And Tom, with the 14th
also works
works
for me. Thank you. This is Tom.
Okay. All right. They're typing as we speak, so I'm just going to speak very slowly for a moment. Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to lock in May 16th and November 14th. Michael, I forgot to ask you, it's November 14th. Okay, got it. November 14th. Those will be our tentative meeting dates for next year. Again, if something comes up, I'll schedule a third. And then just in case there's a member of the public that wants to comment on this, David, can you open it again, once again, to members of the public?
We are still open for public comment. This is your last chance to make a comment. Raise that hand by tapping a hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users, dial *3. Or anyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you so much, David. With that, everyone, that wraps up our final 2023 council meeting. I appreciate everyone's participation today. I look forward to seeing most of you in 2024. Thank you so much. Manager.
Thank you.